Welcome to the Globe Economy podcast. My name is Tuan, the founder of Globes Media, and this podcast is where I sit down with the founders, creators, and the women shaping the future of beauty and culture. We talk presence, identity, story, and the systems behind influence. If you're building a brand, a body of work, or a world of your own, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Globe Economy. Welcome to the Globe Economy podcast. My name is Tuan, and this episode is going to have a conversation which I'm actually looking forward to having. You see, a lot of people talk about discipline, about performance, and about pushing hard and beyond limits, but not a lot of people actually talk about, what happens when high performers, specifically women, perform and actually operating models which weren't actually designed for them, right? So I'm joined today with Brianna, who works with high-performing women, athletes, CEOs, entrepreneurs, and first responders for the last 15 years. And so we'll be diving into topics like burnout, identity after big chapters, as well as why going hard isn't always the answer, even if you're wired to push hard, right? So, Brianna, great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So for those who don't actually know about your background, like how did you get into working with and coaching high performing women specifically?
Yeah, so I started off, I was actually a competitive bodybuilder myself.
Yeah.
And I was at the same time working as a personal trainer. And so I guess that kind of got me interested in the high performance kind of side of things, obviously from a more body-based kind of perspective.
Yeah.
And I was, going through like competition preps and coming out of competition preps and all of that sort of stuff, kind of navigating my own mental health challenges.
Yeah.
Obviously those industries can be very rife with like body image struggles, eating disorders, things like that. And just, very much being like the kind of industry where you're almost intentionally kind of outcasting yourself from the rest of society. So of course there was some like self-perception things that I was challenged by. And then at the same time, I was working with a lot of weight loss clients who in their own way were actually navigating the same things. And so, working with these weight loss clients who were going from being, 130 kilos in some cases to being, an average body weight, and dealing with the kind of identity crisis of that. And so, that really led me into digging into mentality, like what is the thing that has some people just go and do the thing and really thrive? What is the thing that has other people not able to get any momentum whatsoever? And then what's the thing that like some people can kind of get a bit of momentum and then they sabotage and they backtrack, or it's like they hit the glass ceiling and just can't keep that momentum going. So it was really kind of a mixture of my own self-inquiry, but also wanting to then be able to take that and help my clients. And so that really made me realize how much like mindset and nervous system is the basis of everything. Like physical transformation, yes, it's physical, but if this isn't on board, like you're just spinning your reels. And then what kind of led me more into working with women was and funnily enough is actually through my own relationship, like romantic relationship challenges. Realizing how much realizing how much men and women are like vastly different, so I started doing a lot of research into like how to understand men, how to communicate with men better, for the sake of my romantic relationship dynamics. And so doing all of this study, and I was like, well, how much of this actually impacts performance? So that led me on this whole rabbit hole, and it made me realize just, not only are men and women physically different, but we're also neurologically completely different. Our stress responses are completely different. Our survival responses are totally different. And they're actually largely at odds, so they're opposites. But as women, we're living in a man's world. And so, like it's a structure set up for men to thrive. And so, of course, women struggle because they're trying to be men, but they're not men. So that was how I landed in.
Fundamentally tied to the fitness as well, right? There's a book by Dr. Stacey Simmons. She talks about this, right? About how a lot of training routines, a lot of structures, right, is tied around training women as if they were quote unquote smaller men, right? And you can even look at it, as you just mentioned, nervous system regulation, the mindset, even frameworks and protocols for how to think about conceptualize, right? The system's designed, it's not necessary to work for you, but sometimes work against you.
Yes.
And do you think sometimes that can tie back to discipline, right? Do you think telling a woman who's naturally wired to go hard already to have discipline actually backfires? Or
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Because I think we fall into, I mean, for me, I look back on my bodybuilding days and I mean, I was bodybuilding, what, it would have been 12 years ago, I think. And I still am dealing with some of the backlash health wise that I did to my body, you know, just from trying to do it how a man would do it. And for me, it was that I mean, I grew up as the only female amongst all, you know, all men. I've got an older brother. I've got, you know, a ton of male cousins. I was the only girl, you know, and so I very much learnt this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was the picture of discipline. I was the one who, you know, just get on with it, push through. And yeah, that was at my own detriment.
Yeah. Kind of leading to your work now, like, do you think across the board with first responders, with CEOs, with athletes that you work with, what do you think are the common patterns psychologically amongst all of them?
Yeah, I think, I mean, can you ask the question in a different way? I just want to make sure I'm responding the right level.
Across working across some different types of clients, right? Do you find the common is there a common sticking point, the common challenges, common constraint psychologically, like, does it sort of come up?
Yes, I think probably the main one would be, and thank you for clarifying, the main one would be a piece around safety. I think it's so largely misunderstood how much women, especially more so than men are much more driven towards, like, go out and hunt, go out and, you know, go to war and, like, conquer, and they build their sense of self-worth from that. They're still driven by safety, but it's in a different way.
Yeah.
Women are much more driven towards, like, just feeling safe across the board because we're the smaller, weaker sex, generally speaking. So we're a lot more naturally hypervigilant. You know, we're naturally always tracking, are we safe? You know, am I being hunted? Do I need to be aware of my surroundings? And so, yeah, I think the main thing that I see is, and especially for women, in all of these woes that I work with, is that we kind of override that. We think that it's our natural inclination to want to keep ourselves safe is somehow us being weak or lazy or lacking willpower or being inconsistent. And so, yeah, we push through and then wonder why we're burning out, wondering why we can't sleep, wondering why we've got, you know, brain fog, or we procrastinate, or, you know, we're falling into, like, these anxious patterns. And it's because our body's trying to tell us we don't feel safe.
You think you tie into, like, in modern society, right? Do you think that women feel like they need to be everything? Fit,
yes,
independent, strong, calm,
yes,
feminine, everything.
Do everything, but do it without complaining about it. Do it, you know, do it without being stressed. Do it, you know, while remaining soft and feminine. Don't be too masculine. You know, definitely, it's huge. There's this kind of narrative of being superwoman, but doing it effortlessly. But also don't be. It's this thing of, don't be too much a high achiever, because then you'll piss other people off. You know, I really noticed that when in my bodybuilding days, where it was like, you know, as I started to, I guess, excel, you know, in my bodybuilding and in just my own fitness pursuits, like a lot of it was like, it's tall poppy syndrome, right? It was like, as I was doing better, suddenly my friends started to kind of like, no, come back, you know, and criticize and sort of bring me down. So it's kind of this strange thing of, like, do well, but not too well, that you outshine your peers, because then, you know, now you're a bitch, or, you know. So
I can't tie back, you said about doing everything and feeling that pressure and that need to be able to do so. What happens when you can't hold it all together?
Well, I mean, it depends on the individual, to be honest. I mean, some people fall into continued overfunctioning. You know, there's one or two things. Whenever we're under prolonged stress, we either fall into like overfunctioning.
Yep.
So that's people who are like, and I guess they both lead back to the same end point eventually.
Yep.
But one will go into overfunctioning, and it's, you know, that perfectionist, that, you know, the women who can't sit still, the women who are, you know, they carry the load for everyone. And inevitably and eventually that will lead to underfunctioning, which is where burnout, shutdown, all sorts of health issues. I mean, for me, I was navigating precancerous cervical cells, all sorts of hormonal issues, post bodybuilding, adrenal fatigue, you know, couldn't wake up in the morning. My alarm would go off and I'd just sleep through it, and I'd set 20 of them and still just sleep through it.
Yeah.
Because my body was just at complete adrenal burnout. And so, you know, it's, we either fall into our stress responses under prolonged stress, is either we go into further activation, which is your fight or flight, or we go into like shutdown, which is your freeze. But inevitably, if you stay in your activation for long enough, eventually you'll fall into the shutdown. So yeah.
Right. Do you think that sort of ties to what we were saying earlier about masculine performance models? Like, do you find the trend and the pattern of when we perform this leads eventually to that type of burnout, or is there kind of a sweet spot, or is this sort of that sort of difference in how high performing men and high performing women operate, or what?
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, like with men run on a 24-hour hormonal cycle. So men can kind of get up, go to work, or, you know, go to war, go do their thing, go conquer, you know, perform, and then come home, reset, like feel fulfilled, wake up and do the same thing the next day. Generally speaking, if it's fulfilling to them, then they can, you know, repeat that cycle forever. Of course, if it's not fulfilling for them and they're just on the treadmill, then of course, eventually they're going to start to, you know, their body's going to start to signal like, hey, there's something missing here. But for women, we run over generally a 28-day cycle. And so I think for women, we've got to be a lot more mindful of like zooming out in terms of our, you know, how we perform. So being a lot more mindful that we have a week, generally speaking, we have a week where we're at our peak, where we can hit go, where it's summertime, you know, we're social, we're, you know, magnetic, we're charismatic, we're, you know, on. You know, and then we have kind of like 2 weeks either side where we're kind of in between, you know, it's like your spring and your autumn. And then we have our winter. And that's where we have to like really, you know, step back and go internal and allow ourselves to rest. And so it's not to say, because I think a lot of women hear that if they're a high performer, then they're going against their femininity and that it's going to eventually lead to burnout. But there's a nuance, which is it's not that women can't be high performers. It's that we need to add in more intentional rest. And we need to perform in accordance with our cycle. You know, it's not pushing through because even though, you know, you're on your period and you're feeling, you know, exhausted and so on, but there's stuff to do, you know, you keep driving forward. It's not overriding that, it's working with it. So, you know, the last thing I want is for women to hear this and go, oh, okay, like I'm meant to just, you know, be a mom or, you know, whatever thing they think that they have to kind of shrink themselves down to being. But it's doing it differently. It's doing it in a way where you allow yourself conscious rest, you allow yourself downtime, you celebrate your wins, you know, and doing it with often connection at the forefront. You know, men are a lot more kind of achievement based. And so that drives them, the, you know, the achievement, the reward at the end, the completion of whatever they're kind of striving for. For women, we're much more driven by connection, you know, so that feeds us, that keeps us nourished in order to keep performing well. And so, it's just slightly different rhythms and slightly different driving forces.
And just on that point there, in regards to training, right? This is what I find very fascinating, right? Do you find where a lot of women struggle with training is having to do with not necessarily paying attention or bringing awareness to their cycle and the nervous system? You just said it's like a big one at the moment.
Definitely. It's I think we kind of, well, again, we mirror how we think we should do it based on how we see men training.
Yeah.
And so it's, this, I think back to my bodybuilding days.
Yeah.
There were, and I remember them vividly. There were days where I was, in the final days leading up to my bleed. And I would drive to the gym because I knew that I had to get this session done, and this session was at the same intensity as every other session for the rest of the month. It wasn't pulled back. It wasn't, kind of a lighter session.
Yeah.
And I would drive to the gym and I would sit in the car for sometimes up to an hour, just trying to psych myself into going in and doing it. And, I look back on that now and I'm like, what? I just go home and have a nap. And I remember there was one day where because I was very blessed. I had two coaches. I had one a male coach who did a lot of my, tracking my diet, those sorts of things. And then I had a female coach who did my posing and did a lot of kind of like the mental health side of things. And I remember there was one of these days when I'd driven to the gym and I'd sat in the car for an hour, and like crying, like, I don't want to go in and do this, but I have to do this because it's on my, it's on my schedule.
Yeah.
And I messaged the male coach and he said, just get in and do it. You've got to do it. Like one of your, the other competitors is in the gym right now working. You get in there and go, match it basically.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, like, no, like that just doesn't motivate me today. And then I messaged her.
Yeah.
And she said, what the fuck are you doing? She's like, go home and have a fucking nap.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, I'm allowed to do that? I'm allowed to go home and have a nap? And sure enough, like I went home and had my nap and then got up and was actually motivated to go and do the thing,
Yeah.
And it was a great session, but it was like I'd given myself permission to rest first.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely that's a huge one, women trying to track their fitness and their performance physically on that they're always going to maintain, this, or at least be doing, be doing this.
Yeah.
Rather than recognizing that like some weeks you're going to be doing like a light session. Some weeks you're just going to have nothing in the tank and just getting in there and moving your body is enough. Sometimes you just don't want to. Yeah. You're better off just going home and having a warm bath.
Yeah.
And then there's weeks where you get in there and you're like hitting PBs and, but none of it's wrong. It's just different phases. And we get different things from different, we gain different things from all of the different stages if we're willing to actually look for it.
Yeah. That's in that moment there when you had your female coach tell you that it's okay to go home and rest. How did that feel in that moment? What was going through your mind when you kind of heard that?
Well, I mean, this was cool. I think like that prep, because this was my second bodybuilding prep. The first prep I had done it to the T. Like there were no cheat meals, no off-plan cheat meals, I should say. There were no kind of like diet slip-ups. I'd hit every single session. I'd done everything perfectly. And the only way I can describe the way I looked on stage was like cortisol belly. Like you could see the stress. I mean, I looked great, but I just couldn't shred the weight down through my torso. So it looked like stress belly. And I think that was really reflective of what that prep was for me. It was stress led.
Yeah.
So my second prep, I went, well, I've actually got to be really mindful of not being stressed.
Yeah.
And so that whole second prep was very much around like, how can I have this be fun? Mm-hmm. How can I have this be really enjoyable? And so there were quite a few times where my female coach, would say like, oh, you're craving chocolate. Oh my God, go have a warm cacao, and like go and enjoy like a Pepsi Max or something. Yeah. Like if that's really what you're craving, go do that. And so there were quite a few times during that prep where I had to just kind of blindly trust her, and just everything in me was like, that does not make sense. What do you mean going home and napping instead of going and hitting this gym session? That's going to give me more momentum. Like that does not logically make sense to me. Yeah. Now it makes total sense. Now I'm like, of course.
Yeah.
But it was very much just a matter of blind faith. Trust what she said. I'd seen the way she'd showed up on stage, in her previous season. So I'm like, obviously she knows something that I don't. We'll just trust. And that prep, I mean, I think I came in, I think I was 9% body fat at like 5 days out, which for me, in comparison to the previous prep, was worlds apart. So even though my second prep was a lot more lax, a lot more just, you know, like kind of doing things my own way and sometimes just disregarding what the male coach said. It was a totally different prep, you know, like I enjoyed the whole process. It wasn't stressful. I didn't feel depleted. I didn't feel like an uphill battle. I didn't have some ridiculous blowout at the end, you know, and I came in looking so much better. Yeah.
You think the biggest shift was away from just structure, which can get into a certain place, but it's kind of coming back home to intuition, right?
Yeah, totally. And it was being much softer with myself.
Yeah.
You know, like I really incorporated into that second prep, like I was doing a lot of meditation.
Yeah.
That was the main kind of shift that I made. I would go and I'd do these like heavy leg sessions and brutalize my legs. And then I'd go and do yoga after, you know, and like really relaxed yoga, not yoga that's like more work. It was like yin yoga where it's like, oh, I'm just here to chill.
Yeah.
You know, and just, like much more, the only way I can describe it is the second prep felt less empty.
Yeah.
The first prep was like, it felt soulless. It was like, just do the steps, hit the boxes. The more you suffer, the better you're doing. That was kind of the mentality.
Yeah.
You know, it's supposed to suck. The second prep was like, oh, I'm gonna hold my hand through this. And, you know, I'm going to do this for the love of it. You know, like what's the point of doing it if you're going to hate the whole process? Like I'm going to do this because I love it and I'm going to have fun and I'm going to be really anchored in my power.
Yeah.
And I again, my results reflected that very clearly.
I felt a bit more alive, would you say, during the second one?
Definitely.
Do you think, so you mentioned the first time it felt soulless and the second time it felt more alive. How do you, in general, like when you like train for the first time and the second time, what do you how did that feel in your body, like the first time and the second time?
Yeah. The first time was, I would say, like it was dissociation, you know, like the first time was like, I had to just get through it. It was like, forgive the analogy, but it was like being on like the front lines of like an ancient war, you know, where they're like the kind of ones where, you know, like you basically, you know, you're just going in to die. Like there's, you know, two armies head to head with their swords and you know, like you're at the front of the line. So you kind of just have to run and do the thing knowing that it's destructive.
You're somewhat bracing yourself as you
like it was very that's the image that I have in my head, just like just disregard how you feel and just do it, you know? And to a point, I think we do have to learn to disregard how we feel and do the thing, but not for prolonged periods. And that's what that prep was. It was very much just do it. And braced. The amount of times I would notice, you know, like I have this vivid memory of, I was at my mum's house during this prep and my mum asked me if I could do the dishes before I went out, and such a minor request. And I remember feeling these like major heart palpitations. And it was the first time where I ever consciously went, oh my God, I suffer from anxiety. And it was like, I remember going like, oh my God, that was just because mum asked me to do the dishes. And so now looking back, I realized I was already so maxed out with stress that something minor was the thing that tipped me over the edge. Excuse me. That second prep was like, I loved it. Every session was for me. You know, like every session I felt like I came home to myself deeper and it felt relaxed and I felt powerful. And it was like each step of the journey took me deeper rather than pulling me further out of myself.
That's a world of difference.
Oh yes, totally.
Dissociation from bracing yourself, kind of like a chore, so that even like a simple chore feels like heavy, and then And then coming to the second prep, it was like layer up.
Yeah, plays. That's exactly how and it was like, it was this fun experiment of, because I think that second prep was really my biggest initiation into like trusting myself and doing it my way, regardless of what outside authorities told me.
Yeah.
And so it was very much this experiment of like, okay, well, like, because I love Pepsi Max. So I was like, can I have a Pepsi Max every day up until the day before comp?
Yeah.
And still come in looking, conditioned.
Yeah.
And like, can I, like I was still hitting her like PBs in the gym at like 4 days out, and like still building muscle. And like, I remember going and having my bloods done, and like my doctor was like, yeah, freak, like, in terms of like, that I was, because we would do weight checks and we would do, body fat checks and whatever else. And he was like, you're cutting weight, but you're also actively building muscle while you're on a calorie deficit. Yeah. And I put that down to like, because I was happy. My body had, even though I was cutting weight, my body had, I was nourished enough that my body could still feel, and so, completely different experiences.
And that's a sustainable way. You get to just enjoy, what you love to drink, to eat, you actually get to just come in and just block it and lie and everything.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it was, that was like, oh, that's how prep should be. Like I see so many, and again, women more so than men, because I think men get more of a kick out of the suffering to some extent, and they're set up for it. They're hormonally able to handle it for longer periods of time. But yeah, that prep for me was like, this is how it's meant to feel. I see, so many women who just struggle their way through it and think that this is what I have to do in order to have the body that I want. No, like, no, and it's one of the first prep, it was like, I got the body, but I didn't get to enjoy it. Like I remember friends would be like, oh, we're going to the beach or we're going out to do this. You want to come? And I'd be like, no, I'm too depleted. Like, I don't want to socialize. I'm grumpy. I don't want to, I don't want to be around food. Food that's off the plan, I'll be tempted. And, like everything was like, just struggle and isolation. And whereas the second prep was like, I felt so nourished that like I could go to a party and have all this delicious food spread out in front of me and be there with my, chicken and rice and whatever, and genuinely love my chicken and rice.
Yeah.
And not be tempted and be social and be having fun and, have people come and offer me something off the plan and, gratefully say no thank you, rather than like, damn it, I'm missing out and like I'm in scarcity and
so just stepping into abundance and just feel grateful, you feel nourished, and then when you come back to the plan, you got to do harder because you feel your cup, right?
Yes
And you're like, oh boy, time for prep, versus that becomes your identity. Then it becomes like, after that chapter it can all come crashing down hard, right? Do you think that's a common pattern, like not just in bodybuilding, but a lot of women you work with in business or in there's a big pursuits, like after big arcs or big chapter ends, do you find that's often when that sort of identity rupture happens? Or
absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think that like what goes up must come down.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're having these big, like upward where you change everything and you're super disciplined and like you're on all the time, inevitably once that goal is out of the way, you've got to come down. And so again with my first prep, I put everything into being perfect for it. And then so I remember the day after my comp, well, even the night I got home from my comp, I was uncontrollable with food. I was ravenous, and it was like, because I'd missed out for so long, my body kicked into this survival state of like, okay, well, I've been starved, not just in terms of the food. I mean, I wasn't starved. I was eating well, but starved in terms of being able to nourish myself and choose my foods. I was, so starved from the joy of life that when the goal was out of the way, it was like, I just whatever I can get, whereas the second prep, I never went without the joy. So when the goal was out of the way, it was just business as usual. Like we just keep doing what we do.
Yeah.
We just, we keep enjoying life. And it just shifts from, instead of the focus being on getting up on stage, the shift is now whatever the next phase is, whether that's building, whether that's focusing now on business, whether that's time with family, but there's consistency.
Yeah.
It's not big peaks and troughs.
Yeah, that's key.
Yeah.
Kind of zoom back out, Fred. Do you find the women who operate at high levels or operating relative to people around them, do you think they struggle in relationships as a result of that, or?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I think that, and again, for women, who we are in business and what works in business. I mean, this is the thing, right? As women, we can completely override our, internal kind of our biology, our rhythm. We can override all of that and succeed in business. You see it all the time. Women who've built multi-6-figure, 7-figure, and 8-figure companies doing it as men. And we can argue whether there's longevity in that or not. But that they do that and it works. It works in terms of they're bringing in the money, the business is successful.
Yeah.
And they go and try and copy and paste that into relationships.
Yeah.
Make it happen in relationships. But what's required of the feminine in relationship is completely different from what's required in business.
Yeah.
And so, I see it all the time where these women, they're highly successful in fitness or, business or financially or whatever aspect of their life you want to look at, because I've learned how to do.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to relationship is about being to the feminine. It's not about doing. And so it just doesn't translate.
Yeah. And in that translation from crashing in business, right, and the sort of operating frameworks and just the doing and being in that lane into relationships, do you find specifically with high performers, that they struggle? Do you find that's where they struggle to allow themselves to soften and to allow themselves permission to be led by someone else? Or?
Yeah. Well, even for me, I find, I've run my business largely on my own for a long time, and I mean, I've had pockets of help, but I've always been the leader,
Yeah.
And so even though I teach this stuff, I still catch myself sometimes like going home to my partner and going wanting to control.
Yeah.
And I mean, part of that is, again, as we started this podcast, it's that part of the feminine that wants to be safe. And so if we've created safety for ourselves in business and achievement through control and through leadership and through, kind of directing the narrative, it's only natural that we stay in that. Yeah. And so it is a really conscious practice of hey, I'm going to step back and let someone else kind of lead here. And I think one of the key things that I see in women who are real high performers in their business world is that in relationship, they take that kind of high performing, I'm going to say over functioning or well functioning kind of way of being, and they take that into their relationship, and then they end up with men who under function. They essentially end up becoming mothers to their partner. And then they wonder why they can't let go of control, because they're in a relationship with someone who actually is never going to step up into leadership, And so they make themselves wrong of well, why am I the masculine in this relationship? But, of course, you're as a mother, you're not going to step back and let your young son be the leader, And so it's that same dynamic playing out in relationship where it
becomes a self-perpetuating sort of cycle versus the scary counterintuitive thing, which may not be as habitual. It's to step back and go, well, hang on a second. Right. That's actually not leading me to the nourishment relationship that I want with my partner, right? It's to allow yourself to have mission to be actually, a step here.
Yeah. And it takes conscious work. I mean, as I said, in my own life, that's probably been my biggest work, learning how to step back, and that you hear it all the time of women who become anxious in relationship dynamics. It's because in their business, they do, and so in relationship where it requires more of a step back and a lot more space, they're still there trying to do, you know, and then when they're not getting the result that they want, then it creates anxiety, and that's that kind of stress response, that safety, that need for safety coming online. So then they're trying to do, and then it's just creating more pullback. And so, it becomes this self-perpetuating kind of cycle.
And to me, it's the title of the safety, right? And this is actually a very interesting analogy. I'm going to use your first prep and your second prep as an example. It's like reaching that safety looks different. In the beginning, there was a certain sense of control or certainty, right? And that felt safe, right? Until it didn't. And then when you realize, like in hindsight, which you actually took into your second prep, right, where you start to cultivate more play, more fun, more connection, that felt safe. But safe in now a expansive way. It's kind of like in business, right? That's a very easy sort of like lane to sort of like see how then rush it. But it's like this next step, which is relationships, where, okay, so the metrics or the way you're going to define it, it's counterintuitive, but it's like softening into that or kind of almost like leaning into that is like it's like a kind of like the second prep. You learn to do stuff.
Totally. Yeah. And it's that, you know, I think for women in relationship, everything that because again, we've been conditioned we have to behave like men, you know, and so, it's almost like whatever we think we need to do, do less. Like just do the opposite, you know. I had an old mentor of mine and she used to say, Brie, do less. Do less. And that was her thing for me, you know, like the amount of times I'd come to her with something, she'd be like, Brie, do less. Like, don't message here, you know, do less, you know, let him come to you. You know, if a challenge would come up where I was feeling anxious about something, she'd be like, do less. Oh, okay, cool. So like the only thing I have to focus on is just doing nothing, which for high performing women, patience is terrifying, you know, because it's a passive action rather than a active action. But I mean, building that nervous system capacity to pull back your energy and instead of having it out here all the time, like have it here, that changes everything. Not only in relationship, but also in business. You know, like the way you interact with your clients, the way you interact on sales calls, the way you interact with your product, like whatever it is that you're doing, when your energy's here, not to say it's closed off, but keeping 80% of it for yourself and leaving 20% for everything else. You think you're driven by a connection to self rather than this kind of self-abandonment connection to everyone and everything outside of you.
So you have a jug of water or you're filling up your cup, right? But you're constantly over functioning or pleasing or like it's like the cup, like you're constantly spilling it out and you're not kind of like just like nourishing, you're keeping the cup 80% full.
Totally. And that's been that's been for me such a like a tangible way of tracking where I'm like whether I'm doing or being, you know, whether that's in business or relationship or whatever. It's I check in and I go, how much am I with myself right now? Oh, I'm 50-50. Okay, time to come back to me a little bit. You know, and like even in interactions, like how much am I still here with myself right now? Oh cool, I've still got 80%, you know, or oh god, I'm over here with you, you know, and I've left myself. Okay, cool. Time to bring someone back, you know. And I think for women, that's when we're magnetic. When we keep our energy for ourselves. And again, not closed, but open, but you know, still with ourselves. Like people kind of go, oh, like what's going on here? Like I want to know what's happening here. And so then doing less creates this kind of effortless momentum.
And that's like a great tangible way of kind of tying people when you use the word the woo stuff, like the energy. This is kind of how you tie it tangibly. Like, oh, there's something about her, the energy or the presence, right? Or the radius. That comes from the content practice that you hold like the energy within yourself. And that's how when you show up, right, in a room, like with clients, with your partner, with your friend, your family, whatever it is, right? It's just you have that energy, that presence, and that allows that sort of magnetism.
Yeah.
Because firstly, you're choosing yourself, and it's from that space of self love that you cultivate it, that it can start to ripple outwards.
Totally.
Versus
Yeah.
from the outside.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's again, it's magnetic. So it's instead of having to do in order to get clients or in order to connect with your partner,
Yep.
you just sit back and they come to you.
Yeah.
You know, and it's keeping you. I think when you're so connected to your vision and what you're wanting to create, it's like you become kind of this vortex that just pulls it in.
Yeah.
Versus when you're doing everything out here, the energy dissipates.
There's no the potency of the
yeah. Everything's scattered and the frequencies kind of, all over the place. Whereas, when it's here I am.
Yeah.
This is what I'm going for. Yes, there's going to be distractions, but this is what I'm going for. And here with me, it just, I work a lot with competitive athletes, particularly combat sports athletes. And I say to them, like when you're in that fight, if you can keep 80% with you, your visions, the win, like all your energy's behind that. Rather than putting all of your energy on not losing to them.
Yeah.
There's an energetic difference. It sounds like the same, but there's a big energetic difference between trying not to lose versus like me.
Yeah, playing to win rather than not lose. Yes. It's a quantum difference in energy.
Yeah.
Even if on the surface, it was the same.
Yes.
But outside up.
Totally. Yeah. And it's abundance versus scarcity. Like I don't want to starve to death. I don't want to be hunted versus like, oh, I've got an inspired vision here that I'm moving. Totally different.
Yeah. Kind of zoom back out to if you were to travel back in time, right, to Brianna of 12 years ago, 15 years ago, right? Like knowing what you know now, was there one thing that you could tell her? What would you tell her?
I love this question. My brain does two things here. Because part of me is like, I wouldn't actually want to tell her anything because I just want her to have the experience.
Yeah.
Like I'm such a believer in everything in perfect timing, and like everything that I navigated exactly as it was exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there was a lot of hard stuff, of course, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of adversity. And I wouldn't want to rob myself of experiencing that by changing anything.
Yeah.
But to actually answer your question rather than to dodge it, tell her. I think I would encourage her to trust her vision. Like the younger version of me, I think I'm a bit of a disruptor and I'm an initiator, so I get in early and kind of shake things up and introduce new ways of doing things to people, and of course that pisses people off. So I've dealt with a lot of, over the years, people really questioning my way of doing things and then coming around to it years later, but after I've copped all of the arrows. And that scared me a lot when I was younger, where it was I would hide away and have it mean that I was wrong. Or have it mean that I'd done something wrong or that I was a bad person because I triggered someone, or whereas now I think my feedback would be like, no, girl, like that's actually your power, like rock the shit out of it, and like let people be pissed off, because whatever your voice, your message, your actions, your vision, whatever that's rubbing up against in them is what they need. Yep. And that's theirs to sort out, regardless of how they receive. Yeah.
Love that. Love that. This has been an awesome convo. For everyone who wants to follow along with the work and what you do, where can they find you?
If they search my name, Briana Bowley, they'll find me. My website, briannabowley.com, Briana Bowley on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I'm everywhere.
I love that. Drop it in show notes, right? So everyone can find you. And it's been an awesome conversation. And we'll see you in the next episode. Hey, thanks for tuning into the Glow Up Economy podcast. If this conversation landed with you, then share it with someone in your world who's building their own glow. And if you want to explore these stories deeper, then you can find the full features and the spotlights at theglowapeconomy.com underneath the spotlight, the magazines, and the podcast show notes. My name is Tuan, and this is the architecture of modern feminine power. And we'll see you in the next episode.